Good morning, everyone, and we are here today with Tracy Jones. She's back. A lot of people wanted to see her back, and of course, we did too. Today's going to be different. She's going to talk about humor in the workplace. I cannot wait for this one. I cannot wait. So, with that, I'm not going to waste any time except to thank Cindy. A shout out, Cindy, new listener, and I appreciate you come aboard. And thank you for your comment. And for the other ones that I've gotten some comments from, you cannot imagine how much I appreciate it. So I'm glad you've all tuned in. New ones are regular listeners. And here we go. I'm going to turn it over. Here's Tracy.
Well, I'm a person who likes to find humor everywhere I go. And I have found that one of the best places to find humor is where you work. I work for a large retail company, and the stores sold housewares, toys, sporting goods, and electronics. And as luck would have it, I was a manager in the electronics department. And one evening, I had an employee come to me. It was a slow night. He came and he said that he had a customer with an unusual request. And he needed me to talk with her. So I went out to find this young woman. She was probably 22, 23 years old. And she's one of these that likes to play with her hair while she talks to you. And she's explaining to me that she has bought plexiglass picture frames. We've all seen them. They're kind of the L-shaped from a store 2 doors down. But she's noticed that we have some. Well, and we did. We used them to merchandise our merchandise. And she explained to me that if I would just give her some of mine, that she could take hers back and get her money back for them. And I'm like, does she not understand that we do this to make a profit? We're not really here to just give things away. But trying to diffuse the situation, I said to her, well, the ones we've been using, they'd be all scratched up. I don't think it's something you want for a picture frame. Well, didn't I have some in the back that I had used? And I told her I didn't think so, but I would go check. So I went in the back, and as luck would have it, I really didn't have any back there. And I came back and explained that, no, I didn't have any new ones that she could be using. And she said the words I was so waiting to hear. Well, can I speak with store management? Why, yes, you can. Let me ring that number right now. So I called the assistant store manager who was on duty that evening and explained to him what the situation was, that we had a young woman who didn't seem to understand how it works with selling merchandise. And he said, send her back to my office. So she went back, and I watched her go through the door, and I was like, well, I can write this off. And he called me a few minutes later. He was so proud of himself. He said he had told her he would look into it. He needed her phone number, and he would call her the next day and let her know if we had some of those plexiglass picture frames she could have. And that's how you handle it, he said. So the evening wears on, 9 o'clock rolls around. We close the store down. And this is a store that probably did $40,000 a day in sales. It takes about an hour to close the store down. So we would all meet at the front of the store. We make the page for the last call, and literally we were pushing in the information to set the alarm when the door to the back area of the store opens, and this woman comes wandering out. And he and I looked at each other like, she's still here. I guess that take the number thing didn't work. And he said to her, oh, well, you're still here? He said, we didn't know you were still here. Where have you been? And she said, oh, she said, I went to the restroom and got all wrapped up in the paper. So we ushered her out the door. looked at each other like, oh my goodness, we just walked every bit of cash back past this person, having no idea she was wrapped up in paper in the restaurant.
I had one comment. My comment is, don't refer her to me. Oh,
So, like I said, the general public never lets you know. There's always one out there. Just go to the grocery store.
exactly. Exactly.
After my short retail career, I went on into food service and I worked for a food broker. And I was new to the job. I'd been on the job about 3 months, and we had to do a trade show in Nashville. And the guy that owned the company, a nice man named Dan, he decided that he would send me and this part time employee. And now, the part time employee, his name was Jay, and Jay was 70 years old. He wore his hearing aid in his good ear and he had emphysema. But other than that, Jay was a real powerhouse. So he sends us off to Nashville to do this trade show. Well, the trade show's taking place at the Opryland Convention Center.
Now, this is your first trade show.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's my first trade show. It's my first trip to Nashville. So we load it all in. We take off. We drive to Nashville. It's not too hard to get to the Opryland Convention Center. It's pretty well posted. So I had no trouble with that. And we were also staying at the Opryland Hotel.
Nice.
Yes. And I think Jay had insisted on that. And so we stopped at the hotel on our way in because the convention center is right next to it. And we went ahead and registered. But there was no way to check in because our luggage was buried so deep in the truck, we couldn't begin to get to it. So we drive over to the convention center to unload all our things from our cars and to set up the booths for the following day when the food show started. And I had the feeling things weren't going to go well at that point because the loading dock area of the convention center is it's just encased in concrete. So you've got all this echo, all this noise. And I'm not sure why my coworker Jay decided to do this, but he got everything out of the trunk of his car. We're talking about small deep fat fryers, all kinds of things, fairly expensive items actually, and put them right at the back of his car because there's a long line. All the manufacturers and brokers are trying to get unloaded, and it's mass chaos. And he put it all right there at the behind his car, got in his car, and then started backing up over it. And people are banging on his window, "Hey, buddy." And of course, it's making a lot of noise. So everybody at this point is looking, and I'm like, okay, where can it go wrong? So we get the stuff in the convention center and our booth set up and whatever. And now it's time to go get in our room. So we drive back over to the Opryland Hotel. And if you've ever been there, you know everything is remote parking. It's a huge place. And you park a quarter of a mile away. So we park a quarter of a mile away. We get our luggage out, and we start to head into the hotel. It's important to tell you, it was a very hot day in Nashville. It was like 107 in the shade. And we're headed into the hotel. All once Jay begins to go, because he has emphysema.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, Jay, here, let me carry your suitcase. And in between, he managed to get out, no, I should be carrying yours. So that wasn't going very well. I get him inside, get him seated in the air conditioning. Okay. Jay's okay. He's recovered. We go on up to our rooms, and he asked me, what time do you want to get together and we'll go to dinner? And we established 5:00. And 5:00 came, and we met to go to dinner. And he says to me, have you ever been to Nashville? And I said, no, I've never been to Nashville. He's going to give me the tour of Nashville. So it's 5 o'clock traffic in Nashville.
You're a very trusting person.
I had no idea what I was getting into. Luckily, he was driving a 1980s Crown Victoria. It may be the only thing that saved our lives. Jay is driving, making left-hand turns across 2 lanes of traffic out of the right-hand lane. I don't remember Nashville. I was holding on to the dash, and I was pretty sure we were going to die. And so we didn't die. We didn't even get into an accident. There were several horns that honked at us. I don't know that Jay heard them, but there were several horns that honked at us or whatever. But we go on to dinner and had a nice dinner, and we head back to the hotel. Well, it's 7 o'clock or so. We go to get into the room. Jay looks at, and our rooms were side by side, and Jay looks at me and he says, "Want to watch TV?" Okay. So we walked into Jay's room. Jay throws himself on his bed, strikes this pose, and says, "Lay down right here, honey." And I'm like, that is the first time that thought has crossed my mind. I'm 26, he's 70. And all at once, I just had this mental image of me having to pick up the phone and call Dan, the owner of the company, and say, "Dan, Jay's dead." But in lieu of killing Jay, I explained that I thought it was time to go back to my room, where I laughed so hard I had tears streaming down my face.
I can believe it. I can believe it. You can't make this kind of stuff up.
Oh, no. No, real life, there's no substitute for real life.
I mean, you've done a lot in the workplace, from what I understand.
I have. I've had multiple careers. I've had retail. I've had food sales.
Well, I know one that I love the story because I had the pleasure to get to hear it, a little bit of it, when you and your husband owned a restaurant and what you did when what you remember. I don't want to get away with the audience.
Well, I have quite a few from that side.
I would never press that. Would have never thought. But what I am saying is that it had to do with you making a trip out of it.
Oh, when he would do the I'm doing it all routine. Yeah, he when we would be really busy, he would just get into this feverish, I'm getting it all done thing and whatever. Unfortunately, it was just me and him in the wintertime. This is a small mom and pop restaurant. And he would let me know that he was doing it all. And he kind of pushed me out of the way to get to the plastic utensils for to-go order. And I just didn't take it very well. And I told him, I said, if you think you're doing it all, I said, you need to be careful. You'll get your chance. And so the next time, we were really busy during the lunch hour, and he's doing his feverish thing and whatever, and the I'm doing it all routine. I said, if you really believe that, it's your chance. And I got my car keys and I left. I only left for about 15 minutes and I came back. And he never did that again.
Now, that audience, that's a good thing to remember. That's a good strategy. If you want to get somebody to do something differently, put them in that position, right?
Well, it did seem to be highly effective.
What a career you've had. What good fun you'd have.
Well, sometime we'll have to do humor working at IT.
Well, could you give us a little insight to that without giving away your whole act?
Well, um, it's funny. There's so many. I'm sorting through the cards trying to come up with a single one.
Well, it puts you on the spot because you're not at all prepared, I'm sure, to be asked that question. So,
Well, I can tell you this. I I I always like to mix IT with humor. And I found that people stand there and just pat their foot while you're trying to take care of whatever problem they're having. So I used to sometimes kind of go into a little routine while repairing your computer or fixing whatever your problem was. And so I kind of had a little bit of a reputation for that. And there was a very nice, just a little, just a little. And so there was this nice gal who was about my age that worked there, and as luck would have it, we had just hired a new CEO for this company, and it was a furniture manufacturer, and he had this wonderful Irish accent, and so one day, it was right after the new year, and I had established this new thing that I did all of January. When people would call me and ask me to do something for them, I would tell them that my New Year's resolution was that I wasn't going to help you anymore, but I might not help you any less. So anyway, she was used to that, and she calls and I answered the phone. I could see it was her extension. And I said, look, how many times do I have to tell you? The answer is no today. The answer is no tomorrow. It's no forever, knowing that she would find that humorous. And the response I got back was this male voice with an Irish accent who said, I haven't asked you anything yet. And I had learned a long time before that you just don't tell the CEO no today, Joe tomorrow, no forever. So I immediately responded with, well, how can I help you? But yeah, IT, one of my favorites is we had what we called an ID 10T error. And if you want to get out a sheet of paper and write down ID 10, the number 10, and the letter T on the end, don't leave any spaces. You will find out it spells idiot. And, and I actually was able to get people to understand that they had committed an ID 10T error. And that they played along and thought it was quite humorous.
that's fantastic. I wish we had more time. I don't know where we stand on time at this point, but I know that we have to start to close up. So, is there any last thing that and we're so grateful you're here because you're just so much fun. Is there any last thing you'd like to share that along the way is something that's come up that you might want to share your incident today?
Oh, yes. I apparently have fallen down on the job, my job as a citizen. I have expired tags on my car. I was made aware of that by a very nice policeman today as he wrote me a citation.
Couldn't get out of that.
No, when I was younger, I did a much better.
I bet you did.
I just got warnings. They didn't think I could find the courthouse.
We're going to close on that. We're going to close. That's a great place to end it. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really sorry you had a little incident on the way in, but you made it. And that's all that matters. And that's all that's going to matter to the listeners because I know that they've enjoyed this. And I know that we're going to hear more comments like we did last time. So when I say she's back, you know who I'm going to be talking about. The one and only Tracy Jones. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure.